Good afternoon. Welcome to USIP. It's great to see such a well-attended event in the hot days of July. We do have an overflow room that is available 2 doors down, and the staff can direct you to if you're not comfortable standing. And I apologize that we have limited space. Let me say some introductory remarks for this event and welcome you. And then I will introduce the ambassador of Afghanistan to Washington, and then I will turn it over to the panel. For those of you that are not familiar with USIP, we were formed by Congress 30 years ago, and the founding principle was the proposition that peace is possible, peace is practical, and peace is essential for U.S. and international security. USIP pursues this vision of a world without conflict by working in conflict zones with partners, like several of the ones that are here, equipping them with tools, knowledge, and training to peacefully resolve conflict. We're here to discuss a very important issue, and one that I think is refreshingly different from typical think tank panels, and that is how public art can be used in communities to prompt discussions on good governance and peace. USIP is investing more time and thought about the arts as an important item in the peacemaker's toolbox that can contribute to reducing violent conflict. And USIP has created an arts and cultural forum to explore the link between arts and conflict resolution. One recent event that we had that demonstrates the potential success of the arts and in a different medium of filmmaking was when we hosted a screening of the Academy Award winning documentary A Girl in the River, directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, about the problem of honor killings in Pakistan, which unfortunately is prominently in the news. The good news is from that movie's publicity and activism around it, there's new legislation in Pakistan to make it more easy to prosecute honor killings. So that, I think, in a different context, shows potentially the power of arts rather than traditional advocacy to change people's minds, to open up their thinking to new ideas. In this event, we're going to hear about 3 innovative initiatives to use murals and painting to convey messages of tolerance, better governance, and peace in Afghanistan, Pakistan, the Middle East, and Africa. My colleague, Hoda, will introduce the panelists, but first I have the honor of introducing Ambassador Hamdullah Mohib, Afghanistan's ambassador to Washington, who will make some introductory remarks. Afghanistan has been the site of several innovative arts projects, including an exhibit by the Turquoise Mountain Foundation at the Smithsonian that's going on now, and the mural project, ArtLords, that will be talked about among the panelists today. Ambassador Mohib has been a strong supporter of these initiatives for Afghanistan. Ambassador Mohib took up his post in Washington recently before he was the Deputy Chief of Staff to His Excellency the President Ashraf Ghani of Afghanistan. Dr. Mohib has been an active leader in civil society among the global Afghan community. He founded the largest Afghan diaspora youth association in Europe, the Afghan Students Association of the UK, and he received his PhD from Brunel University in the United Kingdom. So, Ambassador, let me turn it over to you for some opening remarks and then to the panel. And thank you all for joining.
Andrew, panelist Umaid, it's good to see you, good to see some friends, and it's good to see so many people here today. It shows that Afghanistan is still, there is a lot of interest in Afghanistan, and especially in art. We're here, of course, to celebrate the power of art, its power to move us, and its power to help us see the world through different eyes, and its power to teach us to think differently about ourselves and about our fellow human beings. But above all, we're here to celebrate ArtLords. Now, they're out on a mission to change the meaning of the suffix lords. They're out here to tell us what the millennial of Afghanistan are a different kind of lords. The peaceful kind, the constructive kind, the kind of lords. In that spirit, I want to paint a picture for you, a picture of a vision of Afghanistan. Picture this. A couple of young engineers building a functioning aircraft from the instructions they download from the internet. Another built a solar car from scrap. And yet a duo building a wind power robot and a detective drone to clear landmines. Picture a country where women entrepreneurs enjoy the same career success as men, and where a rising generation of young people is ambitious, tech-savvy, and culturally sophisticated. A country where civil society works alongside government to make sure it remains accountable to its citizens, where ethnic diversity is respected and all are included. A country determined to leave the troubles of the past behind and focus on moving forward, where domestic government works to heal the wounds of war and hatred through political compromise. A country whose people, diaspora, refugees, leaders are united in their commitment to create a better future for Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, this picture is not of a distant future. This is the Afghanistan of today. Despite what some outside observers may believe, the 37 years of conflict has not broken Afghanistan. Afghans are still standing strong in solidarity with each other in so many different ways. Just look at the long lines of people who queue up to give blood donation when there is an attack. Nobody questions who is injured, what the person's ethnicity is. They are there to help because the Afghans, their fellow Afghans, need help. I want to talk a little bit about ArtLords because I think it's very close to my own heart. When I started working for the government, I suddenly found myself in this diplomatic and governmental enclave in the heart of Kabul city. The buildings inside this part of Kabul are beautiful, still are, but due to necessity, it has been made ugly by these big concrete tall walls around it. It has turned into a veritable fortress today. These walls are for security, but they make the area look like and feel like a prison. When you look on this expanse of blank industrial concrete, it feels like there is no hope. I call it the Wall Street of Kabul. It makes you feel like there is nothing lovely and green and it will never grow. Things will never turn to normal. Every time I pass through this area, I wanted to paint these walls. I want them to paint them in bright colors, red, blue, green, yellow, so that instead of seeing these concrete walls, I wanted them to be brighter colors, so that it would give people a little more hope and a bit more refreshment. We couldn't take the walls down, but we could take them down with paint. I called Umaid one day and asked and told him and shared that idea with him. I told him that I'd be happy to put down some seed money to at least paint one street, so that once we have a pilot and we can show what it looks like, I'll be able to put the government to sponsor a citywide project. But I said that it would need to be a civil society-led initiative, that the government would be a facilitating partner. Umaid had the same vision, but a better one. He had an artful vision. He told me that instead of just painting the walls, he wanted to create art, to turn these walls into an art exhibition, an open art exhibition that would inspire people and promote social and political reforms. I knew he was right, of course. His friends and him, they were determined to turn what was the most depressing part about our city into an open plan art gallery. And they did it, and the ArtLords were born. Even before the first painting was finished, everyone saw the beauty of this idea. They all loved it. The ArtLords is expanding to other cities, bringing its creative, inspiring messages and images to millions of people. Images like the pair of eyes with the anti-corruption message, "I see you," which seeks to inspire people to act ethically. The image of the hard-working street cleaners, which inspires people to appreciate and respect these invaluable but invisible workers, and the image of a heart on a balloon string, which inspires us to remember that love will always lift us even in our darkest moments. Umaid is 30 years old now, I think, right? Which makes him part of the millennial generation in Afghanistan. You see, over 3/4 of our people were born after 1980, after the Soviet Union had invaded Afghanistan, and after the war had begun, the war for independence. Their lives are shaped by vastly different forces than the lives of the older generation. Their hope for the future are informed by not by the tragedies that have befallen our past, but what the potential for the future is. I believe their determination to change Afghanistan's story is unprecedented in our history. It's so wonderful and so inspirational that people like Umaid Sharifi come up with wonderful and brilliant ideas such as ArtLords, which move our country forward. But let me tell you, but this is just the beginning. Instead of warlords and drug lords, let ArtLords be the first of many constructive lords in Afghanistan. Tech lords, pen lords, science lords, and most importantly, peace lords. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Mohib, for those very moving remarks, and I want to echo the same. I also just want to add that we're extremely delighted at USIP to have such a fabulous lineup today of colleagues and panelists. As far as moving forward, I just want to briefly introduce Umaid, although at this point he does not need any introduction. That truly was fabulous. But I just want to echo that Umaid is also a social and human rights activist. He's the Afghanistan Social Media Award winner for encouraging offline action in 2015. He's also the country representative / ambassador of Accountability Lab, and he is the co-founder of ArtLords and Hamdeli Network. He has been instrumental in establishing youth and social networks across Afghanistan and organizing grassroots campaigns around the country to enhance awareness and advocate for the rights that often of those that are marginalized and unable to speak up. Ambassador Mohib has already mentioned this, but really he's brought new life to Afghanistan, new life to Kabul, especially with the drab city walls. It's really energizing, but underneath all that, he's also sending through very important messages to citizens, to the government, to civil society on issues such as tackling corruption, governance, and countering violent extremism. Some of those themes Umaid is going to highlight in his presentation today, and so I'll turn it over to Umaid to kick us off, and then I will also briefly introduce our other panelists as we go through.
Thank you. I'm really humbled and honored. Believe me, this is the first time I hear so many good words for myself, so it's really great. Mr. Ambassador and me, this is the new Afghanistan. If you have any picture of Afghanistan in your mind, this is it. So the young generation, we have a young, capable ambassador in DC, and a lot of good examples in this room from young Afghans who have been doing great works. ArtLords is just one example, a simple one that I had the opportunity to come here and share with you. There are thousands of examples like ArtLords. Young groups starting their own initiatives, taking responsibility, that standing up for our own self. So that's so many examples out there. So I'll be happy to share some of them when I had a chance to talk to every one of you. So I will talk about, as Mr. Ambassador mentioned, we are the positive lords, and then we enjoy our work, we like our work, and we are 2 years old right now, and I still remember when the first time I received a good help from Mr. Ambassador. He called me and said, I'm going to States, but I have this money, and I want you to get it and start painting. So that was like a great help. And like Mr. Ambassador, we have so many good people in Afghanistan who have supported us. They've given me from $10 to like $2,000, $3,000, and it enabled me to go out there and paint. So this is not only my work, it's a great group of 25 people back there in Afghanistan. And the wider community, from street kids to ministers who have been, and ambassadors who have been part of this movement. I will have a brief 2 minutes video, if we can play that video, and then I will have a 10 minutes presentation. So our work is volunteer work, and if I have the presentation, we focus on working on the streets, but painting murals is just tip of the iceberg. What we usually do is we go to universities, we go to schools, we really work with the minds and hearts of the young generation. I encourage them to think differently. I encourage them to ask questions, because critical thinking has been, we have not been taught to be critical thinkers in Afghanistan, not in our education system, not in our universities, and even not in our mosques, because we are always stopped from asking questions. So this work, when I go out there and I work with these young people, I encourage them to ask questions. I encourage them to take a moment and think about this. So all the murals we do around Kabul is in a way to encourage people to ask questions and think about why this is happening to them, why he is supporting a warlord, which has been stealing from them for decades, why the things are the way they are, just with themselves. We put the seed of doubt in their minds and let them go with it. And this seed of doubt and this question will encourage them to go and find themselves and eventually stand up for their rights. So we are the voice of the voiceless, because whenever we work on the streets of Kabul, everybody is welcome to join. So in the next slide, you would see that street kids who are selling their voice, as I said, they usually work on the streets, they wash cars, and they are asking passengers to fill up the cars, and they get like 10 cents or 20 cents. I can do that. So if you see it, they come in and they left their jobs for the whole week and they painted with me. This is like central Afghanistan in the heart of Kabul. It's right beside the presidential palace. So they were painting, and next day they were showing it to their friends that this is my part. That feeling of ownership, that I am part of something. And when this happens, this becomes a platform where we share our concerns. We talk with each other. We connect with these people. We connect with that police officer, with that street kid, with that woman who has so many problems in their lives. But we, for a moment of time, we all stop there, we get a brush, and we paint, and then we have this discussion. We tell them about issues of corruption, why we are the top 3 most corrupt country according to Transparency International, why we can't do something about this shame. So this is how all those discussions starts. And they will take it up to their families, their homes. And then when I go to their institutions and schools and universities, this discussion continues on different levels. So universities, school, this is American University of Afghanistan, where we talk with students. The Afghan Scouts, so different people, they've been calling us to go there, and then we start this process. We then invite them to come over and paint with us. if they have any ideas, any thoughts, any social causes that they're concerned about, they can come out there and paint with us at the same time. So doing this, we had to select some themes. What are those things that we want to focus on? So the famous one, and the one which I'm very, very proud to talk about, is ICU, a pair of eyes. Mr. Ambassador mentioned it as well. So this pair of eyes is all over Kabul. And even right now, there are jokes about ICU in the Supreme Court of Afghanistan. Judges are talking about it. A young attorney the other day came to me and said, you know what, since these eyes are out there in the streets, we feel a bit scared, like really. I get people when they talk, and I have people who will like just cross on the street and they think I'm a foreigner because I had very long hair, and they would say, if you speak Dari, like in our own language, God bless you, like in their own way of a driver, a person on working on the street. They all love it, and they all want to be part of it. And we have different themes around corruption, like these police officers pointing their fingers that I know you're stealing my money, I'll get to you. If not today, next time, in a year or two, we will get you to justice. So different parts of the city with different things. But why I'm here today is to talk about countering extremism. Radicalization is the biggest challenge in South Asia and in my country. So what I do with this campaign is I'm humanizing numbers. Last week, around 500 people were killed and injured in an incident in a civilian protest in Kabul. This is just one story. It's very painful when I'm talking about, because all my life, I was born, raised, educated, living all my life in Kabul. So I've seen all of this pain with my own flesh and bones. So, and every time, it's just becoming numbers for people. 10 people killed, 20 people killed. Every 24 hours, an average of 30 Afghan army officers are killed. So it's just those numbers. So we are putting faces on those numbers, humanizing those numbers. This campaign says, who are you killing? This is a young girl, 21 years of old. Her name is Qudsiya, and she was killed right on the street of Parliament in a suicide attack. So this will be all over Afghanistan. It's depressing, I know, but we have to be very aggressive. We have to be in their faces. And just not murals. We will do songs, and we will do other multimedia as well. Because if you see Taliban in the south of Afghanistan, they have their own songs that they send it through Bluetooth, which glorifies suicide attacks, which glorifies killing other people. I will have the same songs with the same poems, but I will glorify peace. I'll ask these young people that, why are you doing this? And my songs will be handed over in these Bluetooth mobiles. So this is countering them in their own thing. In ArtLords, what we do is we solve problems, find creative ways to solve those problems. If there's a challenge, if radicalization is a challenge, we'll find the solution within that problem. Transitional justice, Mr. Ambassador just mentioned about 37 or 40 years of war that we have been through. Nobody is sorry. They have killed so many people. They are very, very happy about it. They are proud of it. So this is sort of a reverse psychology where a kid will come and say, I'm sorry, I apologize for the 35 years of killing and stealing and doing all those atrocities to you. At least this could encourage these people to stop glorifying their shames and their brutalities, to come and say sorry. That will be the start that we can go forward for having a peaceful society. And then later on, I will have even animals will come on the walls and say sorry. Like dogs say, I apologize. Somehow we have to be very aggressive. We have to be in their eyes to do this. And if you walk on the streets of Kabul, everybody is depressed. I don't blame them, because we have been in conflict all 4 decades. And what conflict does to you, that's what we know in Afghanistan. So nobody smiles. So this was the idea that we would come up with murals on the streets to encourage people to smile. So we have a famous singer, this is our Elvis Presley, Ahmad Zaire, we have like different ethnicities. You would just cross a road and this ugly wall out there, and you would see a person smiling, and this will help you to smile. My solution for this is we cannot change the attitudes and behaviors with force. What my people needs is love, empathy. That's what we have to give them. with love, with the smiles, with a good hug, I've changed so many people. I've seen they are changing. So that's our way forward, and that's what we are going to do. And then, why I did this, these ugly walls that Mr. Ambassador mentioned, I escaped, I cut my story out of it because Kabul looks like a prison, as he said. I used to walk all those streets. I used to go to my school, which was across the presidential palace. I could ride any street in Kabul. It was a beautiful city. That's my city. But right now, every single place, like if it's an embassy, a government institution, even business people who own businesses, they're blocking streets. They've put all these ugly blast walls, and they're growing. It used to be 2 meters, now it's 5 meters high. So that was the point for me, that I wanted to bring down these walls. And what we do is we put paint on them, and we become that bridge between the ordinary citizens of Afghanistan and the people who are protecting themselves behind those walls. They have armored cars when they're walking or driving in the streets, and they have these big blast walls. But as we don't have anything out there on the streets, we will become that bridge, and we will connect with them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Umaid. That was extremely inspiring, and I really appreciate it. I know when I was in Kabul a few months ago, I could see everything propping up, and it is certainly getting a lot of attention, and I think it's really good to see something positive and uplifting on the streets. Okay, perfect. So what I want to do next is turn it to Samantha. We're very, very fortunate to have Samantha here with us. I have to actually plead a bit of ignorance because I learned of Samantha's work through colleagues, and I have to say I'm absolutely fascinated by the work ArtLords is doing, so I do want to give a shout out there. Samantha is the founder and executive director of Awareness Prevention through ArtLords, and as I should also mention, as everyone was walking in, we had some of the work that Umaid was doing, as well as some of the work that ArtLords is doing out in the lobby. So do take time as you're exiting, if you haven't already, to look at some of the exhibitions that we have up. She also works with artists and activists dedicated to sharing artistic experiences with conflict, specifically working with marginalized communities throughout the world. A lot of work done with refugees, which is very, very timely. Since 2011, she's coordinated workshops with youth, resulting in large-scale public art across Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Palestine, Cambodia, Burma, Turkey, DRC, Mozambique, and the list goes on. We just didn't have enough space to showcase all the amazing work that you're doing. So with that, I will turn it over to Sam to talk about the work that they're doing and then the importance of murals.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much for being here today and supporting a slightly unconventional idea in this field like art. I'm the founder and director of ArtLords, and together with a team of dedicated artists and activists from literally all over the world, we work with conflict-affected and marginalized communities to amplify their voices. We use street art and public art to build awareness about the issues affecting their lives. The geopolitical climate at the moment is not encouraging. The media is constantly spouting statistics of death and displacement alongside horrifying tales of terrorism and destruction. But we cannot lose our humanity in the statistics, nor can we lose our logic in fear. When I speak to people about going to a lot of the countries that I do, such as Congo or Syria or Iraq, I met with extreme concern and asked if I'm going to be beheaded or kidnapped or a plethora of other concerns. The reality on the ground generally is, though, that I'm met with an endless supply of hot tea, more than I can ever consume, and invited into people's homes. And the average people that live in these places are here to make human connections. And children the world over, if given the opportunity, will write their name as large as they possibly can across a wall, no matter where you are in the world. They will probably try to smear paint across their friend's face, and they always steal spray paint. Always. there are undoubtedly terrible things that have happened to people and children across the world, but I'm not going to focus on that today. What I'm going to focus on is how we can move forward and how we can understand one another, and how we can create human connections and work to ensure that the next generation is defined by real progress towards peace and not by violence and hopelessness. If we want peace in this world, and we want sustainable change, we need to focus on the next generation, and not just their physical, but their mental well-being. And youth are an investment, and they're an investment that we can't afford to squander. They emulate the actions and the experiences around them. And so we must teach them in not just our words, but in our actions and in our policies, that every child and every person is important, and every person deserves a voice and deserves to be heard. In the globalized world that we now live in, coexistence must be taken to a level unimagined by past generations, where you can encounter a Bedouin man in the desert wearing Bob Marley pants, listening to Beyonce on his iPhone 6, discussing with you the intricacies of camel racing. But beyond, in this globalized world, beyond Beyonce, Bob Marley, and iPhones, we are faced with ideas of terrorism. We're faced with ideas of fear. We're faced with cultures, and we're exposed to cultures that have very different beliefs than ours, and religious beliefs that contradict the very fabric and foundations of our own. But in times of extreme change, it is more vital than ever to think on a global scale of humanity, a global scale of equality, and a global scale of voice. And the most integral part of equality is providing platforms for people to speak, for them to create, and for them to be listened to. In art, we aim to share a voice with the next generation, a voice that cannot be ignored, one that is so bright and so powerful that you can't help but look at it. And we want to make these voices available to everyone. So we do this by coordinating workshops like the one you see here with youth from marginalized communities. And they discuss the different issues that are affecting them with the artists and activists in our team, and concepts are created. The art and the workshops focus on coexistence, positivity, hope, and the future. Pieces like this one, I'm going to go back. This video is going to need to play for just a second. And this shows the creation of a piece in Iraq. Sorry, bear with me. Okay, and this was a school in a camp for IDPs, internally displaced people. And it was a time when Mount Sinjar was being attacked, Mosul was being invaded, and other parts of Iraq. So you had Yazidis coming from Mount Sinjar, you had Christians coming from Mosul, and you had Muslims that were coming from just all over different areas. And those are communities that sometimes do not always interact well, but they were all housed in one camp. And so we collaboratively painted with these children to highlight the importance of coexistence. Oh, there you go, okay. And we worked with over 200 children on this, which was a big task. So in order to give them all an opportunity, they painted the bricks of this is their school with their names and where they come from in all different colors. And they all came from different places and they all had different backgrounds. But in doing this, they created a mosaic of diversity. And they're all different, but together they create something beautiful. And then across the skyline was painted a Yazidi temple, a mosque, and a Christian church. And that was the final piece. And that's where they get to go to school every day, so they can be reminded of the coexistence. Okay. Now, one of the most interesting groups we get to work with is in a refugee camp called Zatari, and that is on the border of Syria and Jordan to the north, in North Jordan. And these kids are rough boys. They smuggle goods in and out of the camp past security guards and a circumference of tanks. And they air conditioners or whatever they want to smuggle into the camp, and they smuggle out a lot of donated goods to sell. And they are notorious for doing drugs, getting roughed up by the security guards, and for smoking cigarettes. And when we first proposed working with this group, we were told that it was an extreme challenge, but we appreciate a challenge. So we went for it anyways. And what we found was after working with them, they were entirely capable of participating in the activities with respect and courtesy, and we had cues all day of the kids lining up to paint their wheelbarrows. And it gave them a sense of identity, where they each got to put their names, and the kid who was famous, he was about 9 years old, for always smoking cigarettes, painted a hot pink wheelbarrow with flowers on it and his name. On another day, we painted at the entrance to Zatari, and this is a girl, and in one hand she's holding the cities in Syria that the children came from, and in the other hand where they would like to rebuild. And they painted the messages inside her face, and it says, "The future is in my hands." And one of the boys, Mohammed, was painting on that wall, and he was painting what looked to us to be a rocket spewing weapons out into the world. And oh, no, Mohammed, we don't want to paint weapons. We scurried over. And actually, when we intervened and said, Mohammed, he told us that he was actually painting a cement truck, and it was pouring concrete because he was going to rebuild beautiful buildings in Syria when he grows back. We often are asked why these projects are important and why they have value. And wouldn't people rather have hygiene kits or food and water? And yes, food and water and hygiene kits are very important. But the answer comes to me with projects like these. When we watched a group of boys finish their wheelbarrow workshop and go out to see their parents, and for about 15 to 20 minutes they stood around with iPhones taking pictures of something that is individual and that is created by them. And they sent them back to all their family. One more piece. This is a piece by street girls in Kinshasa, and it says, "We are all children of the same family." And street kids have it really rough in Kinshasa, and particularly street girls. And it's the idea that regardless of where you come from, that they're all children, and that they're all from the same family, and they need to be respected. So the nature of street art is that it's for everyone and can be created by anyone. And we try to highlight the issues that are affecting people who are living on the margins of society, in refugee camps, and on the streets. And that anyone can see it, from a president driving by in their motorcade, to a prostitute who walks the streets, to a morning commuter on their way to the office. So we take the ideas of graffiti and street art and we share it with those people. I'm going to leave you with a quote from Banksy, who is a graffiti artist or street artist who often provokes the status quo. And he says, "Imagine a city where graffiti wasn't illegal. A city where everybody could draw whatever they liked, where every street was awash with a million little phrases, where standing at a bus stop was never boring. A city that felt like a party where everyone was invited, not just the estate agents and barons of big businesses. Imagine a city like that." So I invite you to imagine not just a city, but a world like that. And grab a paintbrush, grab a can, and hit the streets.
Great. Thank you, Samantha. That was really moving, and I appreciated all the visuals and the narratives attached. It brought a whole new life to it, to what you had sent us earlier. So thank you for that. I want to turn it now over to Nadia, who has the daunting task of bringing our conversation together and then opening the floor up for Q&A. We're cognizant of time, and we'll make sure we leave room for that. Nadia is currently a public policy fellow at the Wilson Center in D.C. She's also an independent writer writer and researcher based in Islamabad and looking at issues related to foreign aid, local philanthropy, civil society, and education in Pakistan. I should also put a shameless plug on behalf of Nadia. She had a piece come out, which she'd been working on for quite a while, on the education sector in Pakistan. So for anyone interested in that, please do have a look at it. It is now available. Nadia moved to Islamabad in 2012, where she worked with USIP. And prior to that, she worked as the Pakistan desk officer at USAID and National Security Aid and the US Senate. She has also taught US foreign policy at National Defense University in Islamabad in 2014. And this is a niche area for Nadia, looking at public art and graffiti and murals and how to reclaim that in public, reclaiming public space. So I will turn it over to Nadia now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Hada. So Samantha left it at a good place because we're going to go to that city where everyone can write whatever they want on the walls. So I moved to Islamabad in 2012 as USIP's first country rep on the ground. So my job was to look at what we were doing and see, what's more interesting that we can do. The first thing that I wanted to do was see what Pakistanis are already doing. So I didn't come to this with my own ideas. I want to go out there and see what are they doing and how can we support it without hurting it in any way. And I stumbled across lots of public art, first of all, and a lot of work happening in public space. And so this expanded and became kind of a niche of our work because we found a lot of people doing it. Once I left USIP after about 2.5 years, this May, actually, so 4 years have passed, this has become an area where we support artists at USIP. And USIP asked me to go back and take a deeper look at this. Do all these murals, does this art, what does it actually achieve or do or have impact in terms of conflict and peace? So, whatever I say in this presentation is kind of a self-critique, and it's a critique of my own assumptions. And it's really actually great of USIP to let me talk about that openly. So I spent a month in Karachi. I had 8 students who helped me. We did about 100 surveys in 13 neighborhoods, not elite neighborhoods. And I interviewed about 25 artists as well. These were all open-ended conversations that I coded, and so I'll share some of my conclusions. So in order to, you'll see the title of this is Visual Space and Power. In order to understand, where our murals or where our art was entering, you kind of have to understand what else is going on in visual space and what's the root of conflict. In Karachi, I would say it's violent groups that are political, criminal. I don't think the average citizen is violent or perpetrating this violence as much as they are a victim of it. And so this is Banksy. If graffiti changed anything, it would be illegal. Graffiti is illegal. So one thing up front that is kind of counterintuitive is that the change that happens because of art is sometimes not in the place where the graffiti happens. Graffiti is removed very quickly in well-governed spaces. Graffiti artists today do graffiti for social media. You take the photo, it circulates, they're great photos, and often it's gone or destroyed, deteriorates where it is. So I need the flipper.
Yeah, sorry.
And 2 things, graffiti and art. 2 things that they have in common, if they're effective, is 1, it's visual grip. That can be the message or the image. You notice it, you stop. And secondly, it engages, provokes, it can annoy you, it can make you feel good. So that's why. But graffiti is a predominant, because it's cheap, it tends to be predominant. Oh, and I wonder if we can turn the lights off. I'll leave that for tech to consider. Visual space reflects power. Someone, an American who was new to Karachi, kind of commented on this and said, because I asked him, why does everybody mark their space here? And he said, this is a way, a dog marks his space. It's a way of, the person who is doing graffiti is making a statement to say, I have some kind of control or social domination over you. And that is the way that graffiti has been used in Karachi. And again, this is contextual. Okay, so this is not Karachi. This is the Karakoram Highway. And why isn't this working? There we go. Okay, so this is up north. So, and what you'll see over there is the Sipai Sahaba, which is a Sunni militant group, has marked all along this highway. And this, you see more of this in areas where there has been pretty brutal violence. You might remember some hikers were killed in Pakistan a few years ago. This type of marking is what you see around there. There have also been buses of Shias that have been attacked. This is what you see in that area, increased markings. And when you drive through this area, when you talk about influencing behavior, I was with a friend who's a pretty brave journalist, and when she saw these markings, she was like, I'm scared now. She kind of covered her head. But on the other hand, you have the semi-state force, Gilgit-Baltistan Boy Scouts, who countermark the space. This one says the beauty of Pakistan is Gilgit-Baltistan. It's a pro-national statement. But you also see a lot of basically sectarian contrasted with pro-peace and pro-tolerance graffiti that the state is doing. This is what Karachi looks like. It's sprayed up everywhere, posters, and you see a difference between freehand graffiti and the stenciled graffiti. What this says is, which one is this? This is, actually, this is some authority is saying that during the burial, do not raise slogans or flags to prevent violence. So this is some authority figure who's put it up there. You see MQM Graffiti, which is a political party, and then you see an advertisement for a spray artist. So you have to hire people to do this stuff. So Karachi is marked by this kind of competition over the city that's reflected on the walls. The city is it's marked by political violence, criminal gangs. Political parties are engaged in this competition for land and resources. They have armed wings, and they are involved with mafias. And they've kind of divided up the city. So if you go into neighborhoods, you'll see certain flags marking each area, and these are linked to ethnic groups. The state is incredibly weak, which is why this type of graffiti is rampant. And violence really got out of control. Commercial advertising as well is also, trying to influence people. Billboards are humongous in Karachi. And then you see this type of stuff just left behind, which I think again points to weak governance. So what happened in 2013 is that the military entered in Karachi, did military operations, targeted political workers, and the city stabilized. A lot of human rights concerns around this, but the city is more peaceful today for the average citizen. What the city did is that they whited out all the graffiti. And pretty poorly, you can still see through it, but this is an assertion of the city's power to say, we're in charge, the walls are clean, you can't just do this. But somebody has sprayed over it, or not sprayed, but stenciled, Kanat Derir, which is this a box for writing? Is this an open writing box? And then also blacking out graffiti. So it's pretty messy, which again, kind of invites, I think, more type of marking. It's not the same as a clean space. So while the main thoroughfares have been cleaned up, the inner neighborhoods still look like this. During elections, you have a surge in political party flags in the top left corner. Bottom left, you also see groups like the Pakistan Fishermen Folk Forum, which is a labor union, essentially, which advocates for environmental and water rights. I'm not sure if it's this one, but it says they write things like, give us water, take our votes. So it's not just divisive or violent or criminal or commercial messaging. There's also social activism that happens on the walls of Karachi. Trash is the most distinctive feature of these neighborhoods. Oh, I have 5 minutes left, okay. When we did interviews, the majority of people in Karachi said that infrastructure, economic problems, and pollution and trash were their biggest problems, actually more than violence and crime. The military has started marking its space in Karachi. Walls alone don't change power. I think it's the people behind them. Is there a constituency behind the art that people recognize and can join? This is a local politician who spray paints the chief minister's face on potholes and trash and other sorts of city problems. Yeah. So, but this is, I mean, last time I checked, he's one of the most popular kind of art campaigns with about 270,000 likes on Facebook. And I think because people can identify the constituency behind it. And this is, I think, a question for donors when we support initiatives for the mural, for the outcome, or is it about the people who are behind it? And for me, it was always about the people behind it. Widening the aperture. So this is I Heart Karachi. This was a campaign or actually it was graffiti in 2009 that went viral, and you'll still see it copied today. But this is the reality of these kind of campaigns that promote citizenship and identity. I don't think it matters to those kids that it says I Heart Karachi right next to it. That's the reality of what's going on in the city, the trash. So the mural basically, or the graffiti, doesn't trump misgovernance. There's another one. And again, these are photographs, so these are still art. And the way that we're sitting here and perceiving them is very different than what it's like for people who live around these things. This was a stencil. So I'll just tell the story of this one. Sometimes elites go into neighborhoods and paint things that just don't fit there. And for example, even this, which I think is a pretty clear message, someone else told me, well, it could be get rid of your guns, or it could be hide your gun in a trash can if you see the police coming. So you never know how people are going to take things, but it's best if it at least fits. So you saw these images outside. I went back. So this was a group led by an artist. They went into the neighborhood. This is Liari, which was the heart of violence in Karachi. The artist worked with kids in the community to come up with the murals. So they did this workshop. In the end, nobody understands this mural, not even the project leaders, unfortunately. But it looks nice, but that's what it looks like today. It's either deteriorated, it's I think a mix of being destroyed and being deteriorated, either on purpose or by kids. People might have been offended by the face. That's the photo you saw. That's what it looks like. I mean, it's a trash dump. The trash is the problem. These areas are misgoverned, and I don't think these murals necessarily make a lot of sense to the people there. I asked a friend, an academic who has a lot of connections in Liari, and she said that people weren't bothered by it, but they just thought it was a little frivolous. They're concerned with questions of daily survival. This is a transgender woman on a motorbike, and women don't ride motorbikes in Pakistan. This one stayed up. Again, this says something about power because the landlord wanted it to be there, even though the guy who runs a car wash in front of it wanted to destroy it in front of us, actually, when we showed up. But what the feedback on this one was that the woman said, Bubbly is her name, people in this neighborhood already support us and protect us. We wish this was in a place where it challenged people. One of the artists who participated in the murals did this on her own. It says no more extremism, and this is the park in Lahore that was bombed recently, a few months ago. And Lahore is very different. Lahore is much better governed. People are used to seeing artists doing random things on the street. And I think this mural fit the space a lot better. It's also in a park, in a place where people can pause and consider what's there on the wall rather than just driving by. Don't confuse art with public space. This is a wall of a school that was painted. It was a mechanic shop, and we went back and spoke to the mechanics. They removed their shop when these girls showed up, girls and guys, and they said, "Oh, we thought they were going to do something great for the neighborhood, so we moved." And then they spent all this time doing this, and then they left. And we don't understand why they did this, because we thought they were going to build a garden or do something for us, and they just painted this mural and they left. So we put our mechanic shop back. So in the end, I think we assume a lot about what public space is, and often even the trash below the mural, this does not necessarily create public space. This is the one intervention that I saw that made a big difference in terms of security. This was a regular street in Karachi, and basically the customs collector transformed it into a piazza. So there's nothing else like this, especially not for regular people. And it's a customs house in front of it. He teamed up with an architect, and they not only developed this area where people can sit, and people look a lot calmer. Women and families come out at night now, but there's also. It's not just transforming the space, there's security on either end of the street, and there's street lights. And creating public space in a place like Karachi, you still need security for women and families to feel safe there. And you can see these little blue trash cans. The biggest liability for any infrastructure project in Karachi is that people spit their bun, which is like spitting tobacco everywhere. And so in the beginning, they were power washing this constantly. But they ended up kind of enforcing this rule that you have to spit your bun in the trash cans, and people do it. And so I asked one of the vendors, why do you guys do this now? And he said, because we know that if we don't do it, we're gonna have to answer to the customs collector. So it's not just that you created a nice space, it's that there's governance now. And there's actually a Hindu temple within this premises that they also renovated. And this was done privately by citizens. Everything in this was done privately by citizens, except for the murals that I pointed to that we supported. I can make this the last one. So this is graffiti that says, "We're with the police." The red spray paint says this is a province for Muhajirs, which is one of the kind of ethnic groups. And someone's written, "Do I really own Karachi?" And I Own Karachi was a campaign in 2009 that the mayor of Karachi initiated. And I mean, what this says to me is just because we can write on the walls doesn't mean that we own the city, or that we're responsible for it, or that we take care of it, or does it need more. So I think that's it. Oh, last point. Marking space is thrilling. Graffiti artists are addicted to graffiti. There's something thrilling about marking public space, about putting your name up. This is Marilyn Monroe Burqa. What are you breeding? This is anonymous artists who have a lot of political freedom because of their anonymity. Should I stop or should I? I can stop. Okay, really quick. Sorry, this is too tempting. The one on the right is a bunch of political parties, and at the bottom you see WTF. This stayed up for, I think, years. The way that they measure, the way that they have a conversation through the walls is to see what stays and what gets removed. That one was the longest standing because people simply didn't know what to do with it. That's Zardari's head. He's a former president of Pakistan. That one also stayed up for a while. Should I stop? I'll stop.
Yes, I'm mindful of time, and
Okay.
of course, there's more photos again to illustrate the exhibits outside, some of which Nadia covered. With that, I do want to open up the floor for Q&A because I know several of you probably have good questions for our panel. By virtue of sitting up here next to our panelists, I do want to kick off with the first question, although I have many, but I will hold back and hope I can catch them sideline. So my question is, and I'll open it up to all three of you, but what is government perceptions? You slightly touched on it, but I'm curious to see on some of this graffiti in the countries that you've worked, does the government respond positively? Is there overall support by the government, or perhaps not, and why? Any one of you can take it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we work with governments depending on where we are. I think it's a very fine line between what you can and cannot say. Obviously, a lot of times we're in those countries and we're able to paint the walls at the acquiescence of the government. And if you push the line too far, like in Jordan, for example, with human rights and the Syrian refugee issue, if you push the human rights issues too much with the Syrian refugees, you're going to irritate the Jordanian government quite severely. So you have to be very careful. So I think you just have to be delicate with your words. And I think also there's that, like you discussed this before, but there's a distinction between graffiti and street art. And what we're doing is street art. And most of the artists that we work with, and actually almost our whole organization, has a background in graffiti, and a lot of them are graffiti writers. But when we do the work, there's been this transition in the art world from graffiti to, and now in like 2000s, all of a sudden it wasn't graffiti anymore, it was street art, and people were commissioning you to do it, and governments were commissioning you to paint walls when previously they were arresting you. And so there's like this kind of, where all of a sudden graffiti became cool and socially acceptable. And so it's kind of a strange position to be in as a graffiti artist.
Yeah, just quickly, right now I have to take permission for all the murals we do. So, but sometimes it really depends on the individuals within the government. Some might, like when our ambassador was in the government, he was very enthusiastic, he was supporting. But for one ugly wall, 1 month ago, I had to wait for like 3 weeks to just get the permission to do a mural on issues of illegal immigration and brain drain. And then this guy didn't give me permission, so I had to call Office of the President of Afghanistan, and then everything happened in 1 hour. So I get troubles like that. But the other side of the story is as well, right now ministers are like competing with each other to, like, this ministry calls me to do a mural on their wall, and then the other ministry calls me to do theirs first, or the Attorney General just asked me twice to do it, and he's like forceful, I'm afraid of him. So these are the sort of things that happen. What I would say is my government in my part of the world, they don't have any other option but to let me do this. Because what I do, I stand for is I fight corruption. I do issues of women's rights. I stand for issues of transitional justice. These issues are sort of favorite to international community as well, and we are getting a lot of aid from all the world. So if they don't let me do this, they will look very bad in front of your eyes. So they have to, and I'm taking that advantage of them. So I always do that. But I think with the new administration we have in Afghanistan, and somehow some sort of in Pakistan, I've visited Islamabad recently, so things are a bit changing, and they really like to go back to citizens. They're not doing everything themselves. They cannot solve all the problems. So they will come back to you and then ask you for help. And we can bring people, we can bring creative solutions to the problems that we all face.
I'll just say quickly, I think the reason I was showing the graffiti at the end, there's a trade-off between political support and freedom to say what you want and to challenge the status quo. You find that a lot, and sometimes messaging that is supported by the government, that you have government permission for, it can become very devoid of a message. And that can compromise on how much it engages people as well. So I think, yeah, there's a place for both as well.
I would agree with that 100%.
Great. Well, thank you. And with that, I'll just open up the floor to questions. We have 2 colleagues that have mics, so do raise their hand, and they'll usher it over to you. We'll take one back there, and then the gentleman in the 3rd row.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me?
And I'll also mention, for the sake of time, we'll just take 2 questions at a time, if that's okay. And then we don't have to have all our panelists respond, but if you feel like jumping in, please do.
I'll keep my question quick. When I was in Kabul and ArtLords was first starting up, I remember being in a taxi cab, and he remarked, "Oh, Matura Mibinam, I see you. What does that mean? How is that going to help? What is that going to do?" So my question is for Omaid, how do you address that skepticism among Afghans, and how do you answer it, and to what extent do you think it is useful?
My question too is for Umaid. My name is Mike Albin. I'm an independent researcher. As you spread out around the country, are there areas of the country where you will not go, or that it's dangerous to go, or are you welcomed in Kandahar and Ghazni, and as well as Herat and Mazar and so forth? Thank you.
So thank you. Yes, when I go back from States in mid-July, I will go to Helmand. We are starting a campaign against polio. because Afghanistan and Pakistan are apparently the two countries that we have still cases of polio. So I'll do that. The good thing about ArtLords is, like, I get calls from General Razak in Kandahar. He's a powerful warlord. So he calls me that he will provide all the protection, but I have to travel to Kandahar to do murals. So this is a sense of support among those warlords and drug lords that I don't know why they like it. Maybe they don't get it yet, but because I think that's the case. They don't get it. But I do get calls that I have to travel. We will go out there in the provinces. And we will start this. The only thing is, in the provinces, I cannot do these murals. I have to make the stencils. These murals, some of them took me a month to complete in Kabul. But the stencils are very easy. You just go there, be like for half an hour, spray it, and just leave. And we have decided, me and my partner, his name is Kabir, so we will buy a motorbike, and we'll just go there, put these graphic stencils, half an hour, and just leave the area. So we will do that. Bilal, to your question, yes, I do receive as well. Some of these ministers, even I know that these are corrupt people, and I know them personally. They laugh at me and say that, okay, it doesn't make sense. Okay, you will see me every day. But I believe people have a conscience, and we can really wake them up, wake their conscience up. And I will give you examples of ministers. One of them called me to appreciate my work and said, every time I cross these eyes, I list with myself all those corrupt officials which is working in this government. At least it's a reminder for some people that, okay, these are all those corrupt officials which is working in your government. And at one point last year, these eyes, in the cabinet meeting, apparently ministers talked with each other that if you have eyes on your walls, it means that your institution is corrupt. So suddenly in the morning, our spy agency, the NDS, they just cleaned out my eyes. And it was like, this was one of the first that I did, and I called it Soul of Shara now. I loved it. It was like my kid. So people called me saying that they just painted your mural. I started 3 months of lobbying to put back that mural. So one day the NDS, the spy agency, called me, and 5 guards were standing there. They took me in, and this guy, big guy, asked me, what do you want? I said, I want my mural back in the same place with the same message, and you have to pay me because it cost me $500. And he was like, he thought I am kidding. But my message out there whenever I was going to media organizations, to private parties, I would always say, Taliban destroyed Buddhas of Bamiyan, and our spy agency destroyed ArtLords' eyes. So this is my message out there. They were afraid. Believe me, we managed to force our spy agency in Afghanistan to let me paint the same eyes in the same location, and they apologized for it as well. So for your question, they are, well, at the moment they thought, like our Minister of Telecommunication, he gave me permission to do a mural on telecommunications, but I did a couple of pair of eyes. And he was so pissed off, he was so afraid, he thought that it means that his ministry is corrupt as well. So it's really making progress and an impact on the minds and attitudes of people.
2 more questions. The 2 ladies in the back, please.
Hi, thank you so much for today and all that you all are doing. My questions go back to Umid. I'm sorry, everyone is asking you questions. But you mentioned that you go to schools, I've studied in Afghanistan, I'm from Afghanistan, and I know that there's not much critical thinking, but are you thinking of, in the future, creating art in the schools so that would encourage critical thinking? And my second question is very quick, and that is, why are some of the messages written in English? Because our formal languages are Dari and Pashto. Thank you.
My name is Shakila Kaljin. It's for Umid. Nice to have you here. My question is an extension of her question. Have you approached the universities in a larger scale to get to start a movement, so to speak? Thank you.
None of the messages are in English, so this was for an English-speaking audience. So I had to, all the messages are either in Pashto, in Dari, Uzbeki. The two official languages of Afghanistan and the other, we have a very good diversity in Afghanistan. So I'm always mindful of that. So nothing in English. In schools, yes. Once I went and worked with the Afghan Scouts and in some of the schools. So first I asked them to draw something. And then we start a good competition among them, and then if we have a good concept, we invite them to paint that on a wall of the school or a university. And the good thing was one day, the first time I went to a school, and I asked them to draw, two of the students draw the pair of eyes that I had in the walls. So it meant it had reached all the way to those kids in the schools, and they just brought two eyes and said, "I see you, Mantara Mibinam." So it was beautiful to see our work reaching out to all the schools and everything. To universities, yes. And in 10 years, Shakila John, I think I want this to be a movement for accountability and transparency. I'm connecting with those people. I have a bigger vision for this. So we will go out there. In May, I did one day, an art activation day against brain drain and illegal immigration. So in one day, I did 9 murals on the walls, a street theater, a movie screening, and a debate in Tolo TV. So all of this was possible in 8 hours, and we did it with the help of Kabul University. So the volume and the skills that I need are there, and we are reaching out to them. And being a volunteer organization, they love to connect with us. And now that we have a bit of fame out there, everybody likes to work with us. So we are using that, taking advantage of that, and reaching out to all those schools and universities.
Great. We'll take 2 more questions. We have 2 ladies in the back on the other side.
Thank you so much, Cynthia Schneider from Georgetown University. I want to congratulate you for getting an apology and getting your mural back. You know, all the murals were painted over from the Egyptian Revolution, and they're gone. So that's quite an accomplishment. I wanted to follow up actually on what you just said, but with the question for everyone about any examples of links between the participation in your projects and then civic activism, or even a sort of greater sense of agency in their own lives. I've just come back from London where I saw the performance of Syria Trojan women, the queens of Syria, Syrian refugees performing on stage their version of Euripides' Trojan women. And these are women whose lives have been completely transformed by participating in this theater project. So I wonder if there are examples of people who've participated in your project then becoming involved in, you know, governance activities or civic activities or education or something. Thank you.
One more question to that? Yes, back here. Right here. Yep, thank you.
Hi, I'd like to direct this at Omaid and Samantha specifically. My most recent job was in a country where the government had undertaken peace building as a very directed and top-down project, and anything that civil society were to do to aim at creating a culture of peace would have to be in direct collaboration or under the awareness of the government. So my question is, in cases where your work may conflict with what the government is doing, but in cases where objectively the aim is the same, how do you navigate that relationship when you're working towards the same goal, but on parallel planes?
I'll go for that. The first question, where we've seen people that we've worked with take on activities within their community. I can think of 2 examples. One was in the Kurdish region of Iraq. We worked with an artist, and I had previously taught in Iraq for a year, so I had lived there and had a lot of connections in the community. But this one particular artist named Safine, who we worked with, was really inspired by the idea of painting collaboratively, and particularly in refugee camps, and taking people from outside the refugee camps into the refugee camps and humanizing refugees. Because I think a lot of the issues that's happening is when people arrive and resources are scarce, there becomes this othering. And he created his own organization called ArtLords, and now he goes in and works in the camps independent of us and does his own projects. And then another example is 2 artists in Gaza, and it was the same thing where they started their own, they didn't start an organization like Safine did, but they work alongside one of our partners, Mercy Corps, and they apply for their own funding from the European Commission or from USAID, and they do their own projects now without us. And I think the idea of sustainability is a really hard one. But what you can do is you can inspire people and inspire them to do something they really believe in. And I think those are two cases. Did you want to answer that question too? I don't know. That was the first question.
Yeah, there was a second question. So the links, yes, from the artists who work with us, the idea behind our work is to encourage people to stand up and take responsibility and start their own initiatives. So I have artists who have started initiatives like there's one called Afghanistan Needs You. They were like working with us, and now they have a very good, successful campaign against illegal immigration and brain drain, which is going very well for them. So. And then we have groups in the universities who have started doing work on environment protection, and our friends are also started another network called Hamdili, or Empathy Network, where we have festivals, music festivals, and for citizens in the provinces. So what we did at ArtLords is we are connecting these islands, different islands of young groups which are working, but their influence is not very big. So we really want to bridge among ourselves and become this big island with force. And then also invite and encourage people to start their own work. And there was a question about, yes, in the issue of usually what I'm trying to convince my government is that they cannot do everything by themselves. And this is like in our parts of the world, it has been the way, this is how the citizens perceive that everything should be done by the government. And the governments, when they come to power, they're also controlling everything. So I'm trying to convince them that they can really let us do some of the work for them, especially the issues of when it comes to outreach, raising awareness and educating people. Whenever like our governments show that the issues of fighting corruption or issues of peace building are their priority, but sometimes actually they get so involved in other things, we have an actual war in Afghanistan, that they forget these issues. So us being there, pushing these ideas and putting it in the agenda and putting it on their desks, so that really helps at the same time. If they forget it, we will be there to pick it up and say, okay, corruption, peace, issues of like that. So that really helps. It's supporting the government agenda at the same time.
Just quickly on the participation question, it's a really important question. What I found is that art is very empowering for those who participate in it, especially marking public walls and public space. So you have the artist on one end who is very empowered by this experience, and then you have a spectrum of participation. And sometimes, and we've done stuff where we worked with a group for 6 months, and even then when I went back, it becomes a memory for them, a positive memory of positive relationships, but it's still a memory. And then on the other end, you have event-driven kind of artwork where you engage, you pick up these kids and you engage them. You know, they do something for a few days and then it's done. And I think that's where, you know, we need to pay more attention, because we can definitely overestimate the effects of just this event on this group of kids. It's like any event or any memory affects any of us. Sometimes it can change your life, but most of the time we have a lot of these types of memories and experiences.
Can I just say one thing on that? I think that that's like a very valid point, but those experiences and those events, like you said, they can make a huge difference. And just an anecdotal example is we worked in Mafraq, which is a community in North Jordan on the Syrian border, and we were painting about coexistence, the similar idea, and it was Salam and Hob, peace and love. And we painted with Syrian new arrivals and Jordanian host communities. And we usually work in a community for like a week. And after the first day, we left and we came back the next day, and it was graffitied or tagged over all of it saying, "Syrians go home." And so we brought in some representatives from the Syrian community and the Jordanian community, and they sat down and they had a discussion about why the Syrians were there and where they had come from, and that a lot of them had lost their homes and their families, and that they weren't here necessarily because they wanted to steal the resources or take the land from the Jordanian people, but that they had to. And we worked together to fix the mural, and we painted and finished it. We went back 2 years later, and the mural was still there untouched. So I think in some circumstances it is just a memory, but in some circumstances I think can be quite impactful for a community and for those kids who might sometimes in some experiences hear, oh, the refugees are stealing our jobs, they're stealing our resources, but then they remember the experience that they had working with one of the Syrian kids or the Jordanian kids, and then that humanizes them a bit.
So I want to end it here. I'm mindful of time, and first start off by thanking our panelists. And before we do give them a round of applause, which is very well deserved, this was an amazing event, I do also want to thank the Afghan Embassy for their support in helping bring this event together. And I also want to thank our USAID and INL colleagues, some of whom might be with us and others may be watching this live. But a lot of our work wouldn't be happening without their support, so we want to thank you for that. And without further ado, giving our colleagues a round of applause. Thank you.